Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone on LinkedIn. Welcome, welcome. We have another episode today of the Balance and Empathy Show. Today, we talk about conscious leadership and empathy. And I am here with the amazing Ashok from Canada and the beautiful Rena from Perth, Australia. So, welcome, everyone. If you're watching, our first question always is please let us know where are you watching from, because we are very curious who we all reach in the world. So please let us know that. Put it in the comments. And if you have any questions you want to ask us about conscious leadership and empathy, put them in the comments, and we will do our best to answer your questions during the show. Now, to get started, before we started this show today, Rena had quite an experience which she had to deal with, which is, well, life throws it at your way, right? And then suddenly you're faced with a situation where you have to show that conscious leadership and empathy and put that into practice in a real life situation. So I wanted to give Rena the opportunity to talk about that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tisha. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all here. I just wanted to say that I spent a beautiful day with some wonderful friends today, and I was with my beautiful horses, well, obviously my family. And on the way back to Perth, just to be in time for the show for all of you, there was a situation where we were flagged down by a very young couple whose car was on fire. And so in that instance, we thought, okay, right, we've got to park our car, but not too close to their car because we could see the flames. And we had to do something very quickly. So, emotional intelligence and conscious kicked in at that point. And we said, okay, we understand the car's on fire. What do we need to do? We need to douse it. So we all got our bottles of water. It's very important that we make sure that we're hydrated as people. And luckily, we had water in the car. So we doused the flames. And the couple were just so happy that something happened, and we were able to render assistance. And that's why I was about 5 minutes late on the show. So my sincere apologies, everyone. But I thought, as a leader, I had to stand up today with my friends and render assistance. And that came it came intuitively to me. And we were very, very grateful that no one was injured or hurt, and we took corrective action, and we were able to douse the fire. So I'm so grateful that things worked really well, and we were able to put out that fire with the water that we actually had in the car. So a lot of lessons. You've always got to be prepared. Like Tisha said, situations present themselves, and you just have to be able to deal with them in life. And it's really important to be able to have that empathy and demonstrate that leadership, as I had today. So thankfully, no one was injured. So people, I just wanted to share that with you, wherever you are in the world. So please ask us lots of questions because we're here for you. Back to you, Tisha.
Thank you so much, Rena. And yes, I agree. You're right. Sometimes things present themselves to you, and then intuitively you have to react to them, and then hopefully you will be very conscious of what is needed in that situation and are able to show that empathy. Ashok, you told me I can talk about conscious leadership all day. So please go ahead. And please share with us some of the highlights that you think are needed in practicing that conscious leadership and empathy.
Thanks, Tisha. And Rena, that's an amazingly helpful story. And it's a story about a number of issues. You were unaware on your drive back to Perth that there would be anything that would interrupt your travel. Suddenly, unexpectedly, you see these young people in absolute abject distress. So suddenly an emergency has presented itself. Now, when we fall asleep, we hopefully we dream. And when we wake up, we're conscious. But the idea of consciousness, and I think we can talk about this in a meditative way as well, but the idea of consciousness is it is actually only a very small space of our mind is conscious. The rest of our mind is unconscious. And if you think of going into somebody's house, that little area just inside the door where you might take your shoes off, that's the conscious mind. The rest of the house, their backyard, and all the other backyards and all the other houses behind them is the unconscious mind. There's a lot of space back there. So why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because when you were driving back, you had to rely on information that you didn't know that you had, that you actually have. Because we don't prepare on a trip necessarily to pull over, to put out a fire. And putting out a fire can be an actual thing, is what happened to you. But oftentimes, especially in the workplace, it's a metaphor, how to put out fires in the workplace. And I think a good leader, someone who is empathic, is consciously prepared to put out fires, but they're also unconsciously prepared to see fire. And we can talk about what that looked like, and then to help to put it out through empathy. And that's why your story is as difficult as it was for you and for these people, is such an incredible example of what can happen when we need to rely on our unconscious mind and make it conscious. What is the right thing to do here? What is the empathic thing to do here? What's the outcome that would resolve it? And how can I look after these people? And also, how can I look after myself in this story? I'll just leave it there for now.
Thanks, Ashok. That's so really interesting. Yes, the unconscious mind is such a big part that, well, some of us might not even realize, and I think if you talk about the workplace, if you talk about maybe your family life, if you want to put out fires or have to put out fires, of course, you want a positive outcome for everyone. You might not always know what exactly that outcome is for everyone. But in my perspective, when you enter with the intention to an outcome where everyone is left in their value and respected, that outcome is okay anyway. So sometimes we are worrying very much about the little practical details, right? What should that outcome be? But sometimes those little details don't even matter. What really matters is your intention when you enter that situation, and where you are putting that fire out, and your intention to lift everyone up, let them be themselves in an authentic and empathic way. What do you think about that, Rena?
Absolutely. And I'd like to extend on that, because from my perspective, where this real life situation presented today, it was also my intention and motivation was to keep people safe. It was safety that was front of mind. Okay, what can we do right now, to keep these people safe? And that was just really all I was really focused, that awareness. So, you stop thinking about yourself and you start thinking about others. Safety was just front of mind, Tisha.
Fantastic, Rena. Fantastic. Yeah, and I think when you look at reacting in those kinds of crisis situations, you see a difference, right, Ashok? And I wanted to ask you. So you have this crisis situation presented to you. You have some people who react excellent in a crisis situation, excellent in the sense they put everything aside. They seem to know what to do, how to handle the situation best, even though unprepared, as opposed to other people who might freeze in a situation like that and who don't know what to do. Doesn't mean that they're not like engaged or anything, but they freeze and they do not know how to react. And then there's this person handling that crisis situation, knowing what to do, like Rena showed today. And what is the difference? Why do some people react that way and why do other people freeze?
Well, that's a very helpful question to ask, and one of the reasons for this is that we're all human, and when we see a traumatic situation, we often have a few reactions that we might have. We might run in and help, we might run away, or we might freeze, be completely frozen. And what happens? When I used to work in the hospitals, we would often have emergency situations. There might be a code and everyone's running. And in a code, they always select one person to be the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you have one person who's deciding what's the next thing that's going to happen. And so there's an evaluation of what's happening and then a decision of what's the next thing to happen, especially if you have 3, 4, 5 people crammed into a little room and you're in a distress situation. It's important to have conscious leadership so that someone is responding and reacting and leading the group in a way that's helpful. And I think using Rena's example, there were some solutions, and there was a way to help this couple, and thankfully, a good resolution. But I also want to just drag in another little area here, and that is that what happens if someone doesn't know that they're on fire? What happens if they can't communicate that there's a fire? What happens if the leader isn't aware that there's a fire? And so it's wonderful if everything is it's kind of above sea level and we can see the tip of the iceberg and realize that there is an iceberg. But what happens if we're not? And this is where consciousness is so important. It's so important for a leader, for example, to ask, how are you? What's going on? What struggles or strains are you having? Is there something going on that might be affecting your performance in the workplace? And when a leader makes those things conscious, as Rita said, it makes it safer to talk about issues that somebody might be having so that the leadership can be more effective, but also the overall impact on the group of people working together is more effective.
I absolutely agree with you there. And I just wanted to say that one of the key things being a good leader is that you've already identified the true potential in your people. So what you're trying to do is actually bring out, enhance what they have, ask them for feedback and improve constantly. I think that's so important. We all know how much potential our people have. So let's continue to bring out, let them experience how good it feels to be liberated and to show us what they're made of. And it's only through empathy, Ashok, that we're able to do that.
Well, I think it is absolutely through empathy. And I think when we start talking about empathy, especially the way I start talking about it, a lot of empathy is actually unconscious. You're not quite sure why you're feeling something. You're not quite sure what you're feeling. You're not quite sure what's the right question to ask somebody. You're not quite sure what the next movement is. And that's why it's important to make it conscious so that you can have a sense. For example, when we got on the call today, I immediately wanted to know, is Rena okay? Like, how is she? But at the same time, I didn't want to over ask because I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. And so how much do you ask, how intensely? It helps to have a rapport, of course, with somebody. But these are little risks that we have to learn how to take. So we begin to investigate the situation, the emotional situation, the conscious situation of somebody else's experience, just like you did with this couple.
No, absolutely agree. And I think it also starts with the intention, right, that people feel. So if you are asking someone, are you okay? Is there something I can do to help with, or what happens, right? That it is not just out of curiosity, but it is asked with an intention to help, with a good intention, to serve that other person, and I think that makes all the difference. And that's the empathy talking, and people feel that when you're talking to them. We have a comment coming in from Octaviana Triastica. Hope I pronounced the name okay. She says, that is me in getting freeze as well in that condition. And so what can you do if you are a person that freezes in these types of situations? A fire occurs, a metaphorically fire in your work situation or your personal or somewhere out on the road, you don't know. What do you do if you are a person that freezes? How can you then turn that around and be helpful in that situation? What do you think, Ashok?
Well, I was really hoping that Rena can help in this one, because I think meditation and learning to calm your center and learning to get into a place and instead of reacting to all the external stuff, ultimately you're going to react to what you're thinking and feeling internally, because human beings are driven by intention and emotion. And so if you can get your inner safe calm especially in a place like an emergency with a fire. Um, People who are not calm in an emergency often get in the way,
Yeah.
or they're not effective. They're just standing there. And so something important is to get mobilized, but get mobilized from a place of calm. And I really hope that Rena will help me with this because she's kind of the expert on this. But I think that this is manage your emotional reaction first. Okay, this is terrible, but what can I do? Take those breaths, center yourself quickly. A few seconds to get yourself calm will clear your head so you can start thinking solution focused instead of trauma focused.
Yes.
So I'd like to take it back to what Tisha was speaking about, and you summarised that really well, Ashok. But Tisha spoke about motivation. So from my perspective, what I try and do on a daily basis, well, I do because I have habit, is I cultivate my mind. So as an example, my day today, it's Sunday in Western Australia, and my day started at 5 a.m. this morning. So I was tasked with actually helping to migrate a herd of my horses. So I have 10 horses that I had to migrate to another paddock, right? So I had to show leadership to my friends who I'd engaged to help me carry out this task. And it wasn't an easy task, because these horses, like human beings, they didn't want change, right? They're moving into a new paddock. So we had to coordinate between us. We had to make sure our communication was effective. We understood each other's body language because we were positioned on that paddock in different areas. It's a huge paddock. We were just screaming out to each other. We made sure that we had a toolbox prior to what we were going to do. So we were all very clear. So that clarity was really, really important. So what I do on a daily basis, I cultivate my mind. I spend that time doing the meditation. And because I meditate twice a day for 20 minutes, I feel that I've got so much clarity in my mind and I'm able to switch very quickly. I can make decisions. I can make the right decisions. Obviously, they have to be informed decisions. But, I reach out to the people who I feel would help me come up with that decision so it can be an informed decision. So it all depends on how much time I've invested in myself. Because if I invest in myself, I can help other people. And it's through meditation that I'm able to do what I do. It's transcendental meditation, 20 minutes, morning and evening. Amazing benefits for yourself. Tremendous.
That's fantastic.
I highly recommend that people just do a bit of research into it.
No, I absolutely agree. I do not meditate enough, but when I do meditate, I indeed I find that calmness much more from within, and then it enables you to expand that calm, beautiful energy outside of you to the people around you in situations that you have to deal with. And what I think is so interesting, sometimes, if it's in a workplace, but maybe it's in a situation with complete strangers, right? And then when you are faced in that situation, you are not consciously speaking about who is going to do what, but you just are feeling, reading that body language, but then unconsciously, but you just know, and then it all comes together in that crisis situation where you can connect to complete strangers and help in a situation like that. And I think that is so beautiful how the mind can work. We have, I think, so much more potential inside of us than we sometimes use in our daily life.
And I think just to expand on what we're both saying here, I think that the unconscious mind has so much information in it. And if you get stuck in that little vestibule in the front of your mind in the conscious, you're going to run out of things to say. You're going to run out of solutions. You're going to get frozen. You're going to get stuck all the time. But if you can relax your mind, get to access to your unconscious mind, not only does that make you more empathic and a much better leader, it makes you generally a calmer person. You're much less stressed out because you know the answer will come. So I'm a musician and I'm also an artist, and I'm thinking, where's my next note going to come from? And I just relax. I just let that happen from inside my soul, and out it pops, whether it's a piece of art I'm working on. I don't worry too much about where I'm going. I kind of let it happen. And this is my meditation. My meditation is my music and my art, and which I spend a minimum of an hour to 2 hours per day doing. And
Wow.
that when I'm finished doing that, my head is completely clear. I might go into my studio with worries and all kinds of thoughts, and I seem to come out with new solutions, new ideas, and or just a sense of mental freshness that Reno was talking about. And so it's something that if we work on a regular basis, we tend to get frozen less. We tend to worry less about what am I going to say, what I'm going to do, because you're going to rely on this huge, vast area that we all have in the backs of our minds, which is that wonderful place called the unconscious. And if you can make that conscious, if you have access to that, and we're going back to conscious leadership, you're going to be a calmer leader. You're going to be more empathic. You're going to be better at what you do. And the people that you work for, that are working for you, will feel that they're working with you. And that's team personship, I think, is so powerful when you're demonstrating that and sharing that with other people.
Absolutely agree, Ashok. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, finding that calmness inside of you will resonate with other people, and you will create that energy, which will then expand to other people. But what I also find interesting, what you talked made me think about some of your best ideas, like you with your music, right? It doesn't come from sitting behind the desk in the office, right? That's usually not a situation where your best ideas come from. Usually it's when you are somewhere else, relaxing your mind, and then letting those ideas come in, right? So what you're doing with your music and your art, and what you're doing with your meditation, Rena, that is actually the perfect environment in creating that consciousness, which allows all those solutions for your problems or worries come to your mind, come to your conscious mind from your unconscious mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a comment coming in from Sylvia Miyaharika. She says, this discussion is so cool and amazing. Leadership and empathy is definitely interwoven into our subconscious minds and applicable to our everyday situation. Well done, guys. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for your beautiful comment. Really appreciate it. And then we have Dwight saying, triggers of fear is based in our nervous system, and calmness can be achieved through experiences. I think that is true, but I would like to know what Ashok thinks about that. But I think if you experience some situations and you are familiar with them, then the next time you face a situation like that, you already know what to do. So yes, I think that's absolutely true. But the nervous system, I'm not sure about.
Well, I think it's a fascinating conversation, and I think about this all the time. So a lot of what I do when I'm working with people, especially younger people, and occasionally I would work with children. Some children tend to be a bit nervous, but most children tend to be pretty calm. And so it's my theory that we actually learn to be nervous. We learn to be scared. We learn to be self-conscious. We learn to worry how we look. We learn to worry how our performance is measured by others. That actually starts at around 4 or 5 years of age and intensifies. So if you look at a 3-year-old, they think they're the center of the world. They're bossy, they have no trouble having a temper tantrum, and they're if they do a picture or a painting, they want it up on that fridge right away. They're not worried about how it looks. And if you ask young children how they look, or what type of person they are, they often have no trouble with their self-esteem, their ego, and their self-description. So to a certain degree, I think we learn how to be nervous. And then we look for proof of that, and of course we find it because we live in insecurity is actually part of our personality makeup as human beings. And then we have to learn how to be less nervous again. It's just interesting cycle that we go through. And then if you get old enough, like me, you start worrying about what people think about you anymore. and because you've done it, you've seen it, and you get a little bit less nervous again. So I think I don't think we start off being full of fear and anxiety. And if you think about just looking after children, you have to tell them, oh, you can't touch that, you can't cross the street. You have to teach them to be nervous initially so they can be safe. So I think that's my ad there.
And I think the environment's so important. You know, you need to surround yourself. You know, obviously a 4-year-old's got their beautiful parents, like your grandson, that beautiful photo that you showed us of your grandson and his beautiful parents, you know. So I think that environment, that safe environment, is so important to bring out the best in that little child, to give them praise, to give them the confidence, and give them the opportunity to maybe at that little age just reflect on what they might have done, you know, to give them that confidence and to understand also consequence. I think that's where it all starts. And then that helps them to overcome their fear as well.
But that safety has to continue on in school, high school, and then right into the workplace. And I think that's really an important thing that we need to keep saying, is that if with conscious leadership, is that if people feel safe, they're going to be much better able to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of comments coming in. Halina Halatka says, important to take care of your mental health, sleep, and meditate. 100% agree, Halina. Thank you so much for your comments. Lydia Chang is saying empathy are the highest leadership as well. That's beautifully said, Lydia. Thank you so much. And then we have Tamara asking a question. She says, do you think this will also include vicarious trauma? I think that's a question for you, Ashok.
Well, it is, but this is what happened to our good friend Rena today. She had vicarious trauma. She was watching somebody else's traumatic situation and she participated in it. And there's a number of important studies that look at the effect of trauma on people who were the traumatized victim, and then people who were increasingly distant from it, the immediate people that see it, and then people who heard about it. You can have trauma from hearing about a trauma. And so vicarious trauma is a huge issue for us as a culture, because we've invented something called broadcasting and the television and news. And that means we can hear about other people's trauma fairly continuously. And then suddenly, did you hear about? And then suddenly we're hearing about other people's trauma. So when there's a world trauma, an earthquake or an explosion or war somewhere, the entire world can get traumatized. And we've seen this absolutely across the board with COVID, the pandemic, and the effect us on as a species, not just as a culture, where we're vicariously we're experiencing firsthand and vicariously experiencing other people's trauma, creating this huge swirl of anxiety in our culture, and we're seeing backlashes of that as well. So I think vicarious trauma is very important to talk about, especially when we're talking about leadership, because someone may, for example, come to work and how is it? Well, nothing happened to them, but they might be traumatized because of what's happening to somebody else in their life.
I think that's so interesting, Ashok. And I think one of the ways, for me personally, I actually do not like watching the news, because usually it's one big bag of negative. No, honestly, it's one big bag of negativity, and I don't like what it's doing to me. So I listen to the news, to be like updated, but usually on the radio, because I do not like the images, the videos that are shown. It does something to my energy, right? And I know a lot of more people who do not watch the news because of that same experiences. Because, even though disasters might occur, sure, you need to know about it. But on the other hand, there are so much beautiful things going on in the world, even during COVID, right? People supporting each other in that situation. And if you talk about the workplace, there are so many good things often happening too. So I think sharing the positive experiences, sharing successes, and maybe the news could add in there too. Talk about the beautiful things that are happening in the world, because this will also have its ripple effects unconsciously, and then therefore consciously in the acts of people. What do you think about that, Rena?
absolutely agree. In a working environment, let's celebrate success more. It's great. It's a beautiful way to acknowledge people. And so it's very exciting when people do great things. Let's just be more conscious about celebrating success in the workplace.
Yeah.
And like you say, conscious leadership really does have a ripple effect. So I think we really need to start looking more at other people rather than self. Because that work culture needs to be coming and be considered, I think, more from a holistic perspective rather than just focusing on ourselves. And again, it comes back to empathy and consciousness. So my message being, let's celebrate success more.
Yeah.
Let's do more to show emotions, to give praise.
Yeah.
And it just gives it really lifts the whole spirit within an organization.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
in my job, I work with a lot of people who have trauma, childhood trauma, and horrific traumas. I have to be very careful. And so the last thing I want to do is watch the news about trauma, because by the end of my workday, I really need to spend that time clearing my heart and soul so that I don't get vicarious trauma. And it's a very common problem with therapists. Is they're listening to some very, very difficult stories all day long, and then maybe there's an event. And so I have to be extremely careful watching the news as well. In fact, I'll just ask my wife or someone to say, what's happening in the world today? Tell me, give me a little 5-minute thing. I mean, it's not like I'm not interested in world events. Of course I am.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, not to criticize journalism in general, but sometimes the news is just sensationalism. And it's why people slow down when there's an accident on the road just to look, not to help.
Yes.
Because we do tend to be a bit curious, but then this vicarious trauma problem happens. So for me, vicarious trauma is a big, big issue, and it really is with if you're working in with emergency, if you're an emergency worker, a firefighter, of course. Frontline workers of any kind during COVID. And so you have to look after yourself. And if the news is relevant and important and you need it to execute or action something for yourself, absolutely. But if it's just sensationalism, I don't need the extra trauma. I can tell you that.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think there's, again, also not to criticism journalism or the news, right? But I think also those organizations need to be very conscious of the way they are putting out there, some messages and that does something to people, and that makes me not want to watch it, because I don't get anything good from it, and you have to spend your day. And I'm also very conscious about my energy. You need to watch what you surround yourself with, not just who you surround yourself with, the people, but also what you surround yourself with. And just like watching the news, it's not really serving me. So yeah, I do the same thing.
But that's because you're being conscious about your unconscious, and everything we get exposed to goes back into our unconscious.
Yes.
And so you might be fine all day, and then you go to sleep and you have a horrific nightmare. And that's because your unconscious mind has been contaminated by something that is traumatizing you, maybe even vicariously. And that's why your conscious needs to look after your unconscious, because that's how stuff gets into your unconscious mind through your conscious. And that's why I wanted Rena to talk about what happened today, because this is a new trauma for her today.
Yeah. No, absolutely agree. We have a question coming in from Dr. Lab Singh. Do you agree that you focus on your duties and work you like? Most of leadership qualities come embedded automatically. Well, I don't think automatically, because I don't think it's just depending on like the type of work you do. I think it's also very important the people that are there, the team that you are working with, that sometimes can have an even more impact than the type of work you do. But yes, doing something that you like will automatically lift your energy, right? And that will enable you to have a much more positive outlook on your work. So it does help, absolutely.
Well, I just want to throw in something here. Oftentimes, if I'm on an airplane, I haven't been on in a while, but they'll say, "Is there a doctor on board?" And this is because someone on the airplane is experiencing a medical emergency. Now, I'm a psychiatrist, but I always put my hand up and say, yes, I'm here, I can help out. And thankfully, lots of the emergencies are psychological. People get a lot of anxiety on airplanes, panic attacks. Um, and like with Rena's situation today, stopping to help those people with that car, and me, always, okay, I'll help out. And sometimes I get a free ride in first class because of it, because the people sometimes need to lie down to recover. So I'll be there, and I get my wife to come up with me if we're traveling together. But the point of it though is it's actually it's inconvenient to be kind sometimes, and
Yeah.
if you're the kind of person that I know Rena is, you don't think about that. You think about, this is what I have to do now. It's not because you've chosen to do it. She had no idea that driving back home today this event would happen. And I often don't think, on an airplane, I'm going to have to be a doctor, instead of a passenger for this trip. But we do what we do because we want to do the right thing. And if we say no, or if Rena just kept driving, and she was flagged down, of course, but for me, I think I should have stopped. I really should have helped out, because there's a consciousness to want to do the right thing to help each other.
Yeah. And if you didn't stop Ashok, you'd have that guilt in you,
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, and
forget sleeping.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I'm like that too, right? Because I find it important that no matter in what situation you find yourself with, like even if it's at home or at work or outside, like on the road, Rena, with you, I think it's always important to do what's right, because I do not want to look back and think I could have helped more, or oh, I didn't help, and then maybe I don't want that, right? I don't want that. And of course, there's only so much you can do. There's that as well. But I always want to, try to do what's right in the possibilities that I have, without losing myself, of course, because you need to be aware of that as well. We have a question coming in from Frederick. Kip he says, well, I have a person who has PTSD. And most of the time, he is absent from work when it happens, like 2 days. And he is asking what he can do to help him. Does any of you want to comment on this one?
Well, I think PTSD it isn't one thing; it's a range of things. If you live long enough, you'll have some PTSD in your life. Rena has a tiny little bit of it today from her experience, and she's handling it, because when we've talked about resilience, which I'm sure we'll talk about again, resilience is in fact how we cope with PTSD, how we cope with the traumas that happen to us. And what PTSD really is a failure in the memory system to turn an event into the past. And so the event keeps playing over and over and over again, and the emotions of it keep playing over and over again. So the person can't, quotes, let it fade into their past. And I think a lot of people who have PTSD really need to get some extra help from a counselor. And I've been doing this for over 35 years, and there's lots and lots of people who are extremely skilled now at helping people with this. And the actual treatment for PTSD is to talk your way through it, to emotionally reconnect with that place, find that safe place in your heart and soul, and so you can put that book back in on the proper shelf in the library, instead of having it right in front of you, blinding your life. And I could say tons about PTSD. It's one of my specialty areas, but I think the best way to help someone who has PTSD is to tell them it's okay to have that. Go get some help. And help is very effective with PTSD too. Most people who get some help get better and can function again, very, very close to normal.
Well, that's good news. Thank you so much, Ashok. Frederick, I hope that answers your question. Wishing you good luck with that situation and that colleague, wishing him the best. We have Vance Brutus saying, since 2017, no more TV at home. I get news only from social media. I know actually quite a lot of people who do not have TV at home because they do not want that kind of energy in their house, also for their kids growing up, right? And I think you also need to be very aware of what you expose yourself and your children to, like TV, because consciously, unconsciously, it will affect them in a manner. The only thing I want to say to Vance is only social media news. Just make sure that it's a reliable source, right, from news, and that you can really rely that is the news. Because sometimes there is sensations. They want to have more likes. They want to have more views. And then it's all about that, and it's not so much about the news. Well, I think the news is really what should matter. Um, then we have Helena coming back. This is quite traumatic. She says, when I was 16, I lost my mom, my brother, her sister, and kids in one day. That's terrible, Helena. I'm so sorry for you and your family, for your loss. That's terrible. And I don't know if you have a question regarding this topic that we talk about today. If so, please put it in the comments, and we can do our best to answer it. But yeah, that is something that will, how do you say, that will define you in the way you are today, you know, and also how you practice your leadership. So if you have any question, Helena, please put it in the chat. And again, we are all very sorry that this has happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Mayerling Trinidad saying, thanks for it. The power skills beginning for me yourself. I think what she's saying, that it all begins within yourself, you know, and I think that's so true. I think you are your most powerful voice. You can be, if you are conscious of it, right? And if you work on it, because getting that unconscious mind to really work for you, it takes time and it takes effort. Like Rena explained, you know, it takes daily effort. So if you really want to, you know, benefit from this and turn some thoughts in your head around, then you really need to meditate on a daily basis. And if you have any questions, please contact Rena about this, because she can tell you all about this. I'm just scrolling through the comments here to see if we have any other comments or questions.
I just want to make a quick point about the way the mind works and the brain. I often use the muscle analogy. And if you look at a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger's arm when he was 12, it wasn't that big.
No.
And if you look at it by the time he's in his 20s, you know, it's massive. So I think it's the same muscle. It's exactly the same muscle. It's simply gotten bigger. And the mind is the same thing. If you work the muscle of your mind, especially the way, you know, Rena is describing it, on a regular basis, or if you find a hobby that relaxes your mind, or if you have an activity, an exercise, for example, that relaxes your mind, that muscle gets bigger and your mind gets stronger. And I know that when I do what I do, my various exercises and my thing, I don't think I'm that much smarter, but I feel I am, because I think that muscle is stronger. And thoughts come to you quicker, and ideas come to you quicker, and you have more patience. Your listening skills are better. I think the mind is a phenomenal muscle, if you will, that if you exercise it a lot, it gets stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic, Ashok. Thank you for that analogy. I think that's a fantastic comparison, and I 100% agree on that. Someone is saying, I can't see the name, probably because we're not connected yet. Sometimes that happens. So he or she is saying emotional intelligence and empathy are the components that are encouraging leadership on his workplace. Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely agree. I think that's exactly what we are talking about today. So yeah, I would like to encourage all leaders, all people actually, to work on your conscious and your unconscious, work on that muscle, because I think in the end, if you invest, and that's what it's all about, right? You need to invest time in you, because when you do that, you are in a much better place to help others around you. So that's what it ultimately comes down to. So we are actually reaching almost 45 minutes today. Such an interesting topic, right? We got so many questions and comments. So thank you, everyone who is watching. We're going to close the show in a couple of minutes. Just looking for some closing comments. If you can advise to our audience regarding conscious leadership and empathy, your number one tip, Rena and Ashok. Rena, start with you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tisha. Well, my recommendation is based on myself and my own journey and experience. So what I would highly encourage you to do is to instill those good habits call that muscle that Ashok and Tisha have spoken about. And, you know, help to liberate, empower people through meditation. Look into transcendental meditation. It has so many benefits. And I'm more than happy to talk to you about my own experience. I've been meditating for over 40 years. That would be my recommendation, everyone.
Fantastic, Rena. Thank you. Ashok, what's your number one tip?
That's fabulous, Rena. For me, I think the more you know your unconscious, the more you have control over your consciousness, whether it's through psychotherapy, meditation, self-reflection, even just journaling, sitting down and writing a reflection of your day and your intention for tomorrow. The more you're aware of yourself, the more likely you're going to be in control of yourself. You're going to be calmer. You're going to be more effective in everything you do. And that's why I think that it's important that hope we've conveyed that today. And the more you're conscious of your unconscious, that muscle is flexible, is strong, and it can do really good things for you, but also for the people around you.
Fantastic, Ashok. Thank you so much. And I'd like to summarize that by please take the time to invest in you, in your unconscious and your conscious. Take time to invest in yourself, because then you create the ripple effects that you want to see around you, in your family, in your team, in the workplace, right? And everyone around you will also benefit, and it will be such an amazing ripple effect that you create. So thank you everyone for watching today, and we are looking forward to seeing you again in another 2 weeks with another topic. See you then. Bye-bye.